Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It was already about 5 in the evening, and I'll tell you, it was one of those days. The work was fine, but the chaos of life outside the office made me tormented by a lot of questions. When I opened the door of the bar, I was enveloped in a familiar haze of smoke and laughter. And there he was, sitting complacently on a stool, as if he owned the place. Kevin Carter, the bastard. I sat down on the seat next to him and held out my hand with a forced smile. Kevin Carter, it's been a long time. He acted like I was a ghost that had just been stalking him, transparent as a window, this guy. Charlie Collins, I added, trying to stay calm. Does my wife work with you? I think we met at a Christmas party last year. Recognition flashed in his eyes, but he portrayed it as a professional. Oh, of course, Charlie. It's nice to see you again, he replied, shaking my hand, which was strangely sticky. How are you, Charlie? He asked, his tone betraying an assumed concern, as if he didn't already know the answer. I ordered a beer, hoping it would wash away the day's disappointment. Well, you know it's the same as before, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. The bartender put the cold bottle on the counter, and I took a deep, satisfied sip. Just what I needed after the whirlwind of the day. Kevin leaned towards me, his curiosity piqued. I heard that you are a very well-read person. Your wife never ceases to admire your latest story. The way he said it made us talk about reading as some kind of great achievement, a trophy for the elite. I almost laughed. That's what they teach in elementary school, buddy. But instead I replied, yes, I do read a lot, but she probably meant the stories I write. I took another sip of the amber liquid, enjoying the warmth spreading through my body. Really? Have you written anything that I could read? He asked, genuinely intrigued. Or so he pretended. A stream of sarcastic responses raced through my head, each one sharper than the last. But instead of letting them out, I just shrugged my shoulders. Probably not, I replied dispassionately. I mostly write short stories and post them online. The feedback can be very instructive. It's a wild ride, really. Sometimes it's like a writing workshop where ideas bloom, and sometimes it's like fighting a pack of rabid dogs. He chuckled, though I couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was his hidden sense of superiority that burst to the surface. So, what are you writing about? He asked, raising an eyebrow. About all sorts of things, I replied casually. I carefully observe the world around me. I listen to the conversations that swirl around me like the wind. Just by listening to them, one can gain treasures of knowledge. And then you report your findings? He asked, still grinning to himself. Not really, I corrected him. I'm thinking about what I've heard, dissecting it in my mind. I'm trying to figure out what drives people, what makes them tick. Writing is just a means that I use to express these thoughts. I'd rather watch football, he replied. I'm not surprised, I replied, grinning. I bet he's never kicked a ball in his life. So how do you write these little stories of yours? There was a note of condescending curiosity in his voice. If you really think about the characters you're creating, they start living their own lives, I explained, and a hint of passion crept into my voice. Stories breathe, grow, and sometimes even surprise. You set the stage, and the characters take the reins of power into their own hands, directing the narrative wherever they please. In my case, it's a form of meditation, a way to unravel the complexities of those who often escape my attention. Maybe you need to go outside more often? The world around us is a treasure trove of stories that are just waiting to be discovered, and that's the essence of it all. When you write, you can immerse yourself in a tapestry of words, exploring areas of opportunity that are simply not available in reality. For example? He asked, his curiosity piqued. I took another sip of beer and caught my reflection in the bar mirror, deciding to hold my gaze until I felt ready. Imagine, you caught your wife with some pathetic coward. You fly into a rage and deliver a blow that breaks his nose with a bang, blood splashes, and he falls to the floor. In a rage, you throw away the betrayal and kick her out, leaving only the clothes on her back. On the pages of fiction, you can enjoy it. But in the real world, you will most likely end up in handcuffs, no matter how justified you think you are, at least in most places. Here in our state, you can be praised for your restraint, but your wife will still leave with half. The arrogant jerk laughed, clearly mistaking my thoughts for some kind of joke addressed to me. That was my signal to finish the story. Yes, indeed. Writing is a great escape from the monotony of life. You can create scenarios in which everything is possible, and each story can end on a high note. That was his last barb. I drained the beer and threw the money on the counter, and then slammed my palms on the bar, telling no one in particular. It was amazing. I stood for a moment at the door, partially turning my back, and immediately felt a surge of defiance. "Oh, one more thing," I said, my voice low and even. With these words, I poured out all the pent-up rage and resentment that I carried inside me and directed it into one crushing blow. Time seemed to slow down. I felt every muscle in my body tense, every ounce of strength rushing from my toes to my shoulders. Then, with a quick movement, I delivered a circular blow directly to his nose. There was a pleasant crack in the dimly lit bar as his nose shattered, and I watched with a grim sense of satisfaction as blood gushed from his face and he collapsed from his stool. I loomed over him, my presence casting a long shadow as he tried to protect himself from the reckoning he had been avoiding for a long time. Taking out my message, I turned and left the bar, leaving the coward to wallow in his own cowardice. I will not allow myself to be shackled by the law for the sake of a man who preys on married women. When I finally got home, the clock had already struck dinner time, and my wife was waiting for me. There was irritation in her voice. "You're late again. The food is cold. Where have you disappeared to? And why didn't you call?" Her words swept over me like a distant storm, but I ignored them as I climbed the stairs to change my clothes. My arm ached and needed ice, and a cold cloth would have calmed my face, but I felt a strange excitement creeping into me. Just as I was about to relax, I heard a muffled phone conversation coming from downstairs. The tone was unfamiliar and tense. Feeling refreshed, I returned downstairs and saw that my wife was visibly shaken. Her behavior had changed. The horror written on her face sent a chill down my spine. It was as if the specter of divorce hung over us. There were tears in her eyes as she stuttered, "I'm sorry. It's not what you think. He and I have never made love. We just danced and flirted a little." Her words hung in the air, heavy and insoluble, as I tried to reconcile the chaos of the evening with the mess unfolding in front of me. How would you feel about me accidentally flirting with Amelia Butler? She had a gorgeous appearance that could make grown men cry, and it was quite obvious that my wife was seething with jealousy because Amelia was attracting attention to herself wherever she went. All I could do was watch as my wife hung her head and tears started to come to her eyes. Would you like to clarify what flirted really means? Confession is good for the soul, and today I was determined not to let it escape my scrutiny. She was getting hot in front of my eyes. Her suffering was palpable. We shared a kiss, a fleeting moment that ignited something, but it barely touched the surface, only grazing my blouse. He never crossed the line, at least not completely. Her confession echoed the whispers I'd heard, and I believed her, even though guilt gnawed at me. What was the result of all this relationship? We just had a whirlwind of emotions. I swear there was nothing else. But it didn't go any further than that. I swear it. She was gasping for breath, struggling to find the words. "You know I'm unhappy, right? Do you realize that this is going to stay between us for a long time?" She nodded, and a weight of understanding hung in the air. I could say that my eyes and ears were open in this city. If her story didn't match what my friends shared, she'd be out the door by now. "You know that, don't you?" "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her panic obvious. "I let him in, but it didn't go any further, I swear it." But the thought was running through my head that you let him go further than he should have. I would leave these thoughts for another day. People are complicated, and that's what makes stories so rich and exciting. In the tapestry of history, the characters may seem simple, but the reality of human nature is a complex maze. She dances on the verge of flirting, wavering between the thrill of another man's attention and the sanctity of wedding vows. And yet deep down, I know that she values these vows. They are more than just words to her. When she speaks, I swear, it sounds like it echoes through the heavens, calling God to witness. Calling the divine to witness is not a trivial matter, and she has never taken it lightly, not once. This brings us to the crucial difference between fiction and reality. Characters in stories can embody some kind of imperfect perfection, while real people, no matter how kind they are prone to mistakes. They struggle with imperfection, self-doubt, and an innate desire to be accepted. The real question looms over them. Will they be able to learn from their mistakes, or are they destined to repeat them? To find the answer, it is necessary to penetrate into the depths of their motivations, and this often turns out to be a difficult task. When the aroma of dinner fills the air, I feel the seriousness of the upcoming conversation. Let's warm up the atmosphere, I suggest, glancing at her. She nods enthusiastically. Of course, honey, of course. A wave of remorse overwhelms me as I read the thoughts swarming in her head, the dilemma that weighs heavily on her heart. Honey, are we going to sleep together tonight? She asks, hope and apprehension mixed in her voice. I don't know, Susan, I reply. We have some important tasks to solve first. You know that, right? I add, trying to calm her down. She wraps her arms around me and pulls me to her, brushing away the tears that ran down my cheek. Yes, honey. I love you. I really love you. I don't know how he even managed to get into my heart. I can't even figure out how he managed to get into my heart, but I promise it won't happen again. I loved you too, but I need you to understand that my trust in you has been shaken. I hope you understand that. She nodded silently, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. The sight of her vulnerability touched my heart. I took a deep breath, holding back the words that threatened to burst out. Instead, I suggested, let's warm up the leftovers, and then you pack up and leave my life forever. Oh no, Charlie, don't do this, please. Susan, I know everything. You ruined our 30-year marriage. Our children already know everything. I was hoping for the truth, but you're always lying. You slept not only with your boss, but also with a young colleague. You have a little time to pack up and leave. Goodbye, cheater. You won't get anything, no love, no respect. Our children hate you. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. You won't believe how much it costs to hire a sheriff's deputy who will put on a cheerful red suit and deliver the divorce papers to your wife on Christmas Eve. It's quite expensive, but trust me, it's worth every cent. By the time we met behind the garage, he was already in full Santa form, and let me tell you that he was just great. His suit was custom-made, and his black patent leather boots shone in the moonlight. White hair and beard, very authentic, and his eyes, oh, how they sparkled with mischief. The dimples on his cheeks were as joyful as a child's on Christmas morning, and his cheeks were rosy as freshly picked apples. Nose, cherry red and perfectly round. Deputy Jackson, as a professional, had a lot of excess weight, and his stomach swayed deliciously, like jelly in a bowl. It was creepy. It felt like I was standing next to a real person. Are you sure you want to go through with this? In response, I handed him a briefcase full of envelopes and gestured to a bag overflowing with gifts ready for the grand opening. I'll see you inside in 5 minutes. Our house was filled with the energy of friends and family. The joyful gathering had been going on for over 2 hours. Laughter bounced off the walls, mixing with the clink of glasses. Old friendships were renewed, and new ones were formed. The atmosphere was electric. Drinks flowed like a river, and the hilarious stories exchanged by the guests wove a tapestry of fun. Christmas Eve was an event that no one dared to miss, and yet I, the kind host, harbored a heart as dark as coal, and a spirit no less insidious than the Grinch himself. Our marriage was in ruins, and only the thirst for revenge spurred my movements. As soon as the big clock in the living room struck 8, a wave of anticipation swept through the crowd. The grandchildren burst into cheers as Santa's knock echoed through the house, and the sound rang in my ears for a long time. Santa dragged his bulky bag of sweets into the foyer, and a ringing ho 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 sounded in the air, drowning out all other sounds. I greeted the cheerful old man with a hearty handshake and escorted him to the chair of honor strategically located in front of the sparkling Christmas tree. Our 5 children gathered all 10 grandchildren and led them to the rousing song, "Here Comes Santa." I arranged with a close friend to film every moment on video, and when I caught his eye, he gave me a thumbs up. Santa opened his bag with a twinkle in his eyes and took out a beautifully wrapped gift, addressing us, "Oscar Jr., did you behave yourself?" One by one, from junior to senior, they jumped onto his lap, their innocent faces glowing with hope as they swore their good behavior and eagerly awaited the reward. For Anna, she is a talking doll, an exciting video game for Christian. The room was a colorful chaos of wrapping paper and torn ribbons, creating a festive sea that reached to our ankles. It was time for the adults to unwrap their gifts, and I couldn't help but feel excitement mixed with horror. "Listen carefully, everyone," I announced in a playful but serious tone. "And don't open your presents until Santa leaves, otherwise you'll ruin the surprise. And I remind you that this event is for adults only." As soon as these words left my lips, I felt a wave of intrigue sweep through the crowd. Everyone gathered around, wanting to take part in the ceremony. While the camera was snapping, capturing the moment, each adult was handed a bright red or green envelope with names elegantly inscribed in shimmering gold. A whisper of speculation filled the air as they exchanged glances. What treasures might be hidden inside? Dreams of a family vacation in sun-soaked countries flashed through my mind, but I tried my best to keep a calm look. Deep down, I was struggling with a storm of emotions. Each envelope reminded me of a dark secret that I had revealed just a few weeks ago. The woman I lived with for 39 years, the mother of my children, was involved in an affair with her boss. I won't bore you with the details of how I came across such a betrayal. I'll just say that the moment I looked at the photos provided by the detective, disbelief turned into a cold, hard reality. Watching the hopeful faces around me, I couldn't help feeling that in every envelope there was a nail for my family, sealing the fate of a life that I once thought was perfect. Inside each envelope was a treasure trove of 6 stunning photographs, artfully capturing the secret bond between Thomas and my wife. As tempting as it was to enclose a DVD with the best hits showing off their escapades, one of them even depicted our marital bed, I refused. Those memories should have stayed in the courtroom, not at this moment. One by one, our children came up to me, their eyes shining with pride, and everyone exclaimed, "Father, you have distinguished yourself this year." Among them, my youngest, Amanda, held a special place in my heart. "Daddy, I will remember this evening forever," she declared, and I nodded, realizing that this evening would really remain in her memory. Chloe, my future ex-wife, looked no less excited than the children when her name was finally announced. It was hard to swallow the audacity of it all. Here she is, the woman who betrayed me, sitting on Thomas's lap and stealing kisses from him. Her envelope was the largest, filled with secrets. When Santa called, "Are you Chloe Hill?" she giggled and replied, "Of course you are." He didn't have to ask if she was a good girl. The contents of her envelope spoke for itself. Showing her a bright red envelope, he announced, "Chloe Hill, you've been served." She bent down to kiss him and happily replied, "Thank you, Santa." As he carefully lifted her off his lap and began to make his way to the door, I couldn't help but remember the advice my lawyer had given me. He thought I'd go crazy when I shared my plan. "Save your money. You'll need it to pay my bill," he said. But I was glad I hadn't heeded his warning. The moment of reckoning had finally arrived, and it filled me with a sense of satisfaction. Just before he left, one of my granddaughters gave Santa a bag of treats and a carrot for his reindeer. Leaning closer, he whispered, "I hope you know what you're doing." I smiled, knowing that sometimes the most unexpected twists of fate lead to the sweetest victories. I threw on my jacket and shouted, "Merry Christmas and good night to everyone." The spirit of the season filled the air, and waving goodbye to Santa, I half expected to see a sleigh with reindeer soaring into the starry sky. "You better leave before the whole family is immersed in these envelopes," I warned with a grin, remembering the surprises hidden inside. At the beginning of the day, I threw my suitcases in the trunk, ready to go on a Christmas adventure. In the very center of the city, an empty hotel room was waiting for me, a cozy refuge from the festive bustle. I started the car and watched Santa's red sleigh disappear into the driveway. I thought my grandchildren's enthusiastic screams couldn't top them, but the chorus of excited adults rang like holiday bells. I drove out onto the road, anticipating the mysterious night that awaited me ahead. The deed was done. The cheater will be punished when our whole extended family sees what's in their envelopes. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.